During the past 5 years, in addition to managing the performance of their teams with little or no training or coaching, expectations for leaders have expanded to include engaging employees, ensuring their mental health and well-being, and attending to their psychological safety. They are expected to foster a work environment where they lead for performance excellence and accountability, while making sure at the same time that employees feel a sense of belonging and inclusion, that their feelings are never hurt by correcting a performance, and that they attend to their needs without themselves ever feeling frustrated, upset, or disappointed. And leaders are walking on eggshells, unsure of how to hold employees accountable for meeting performance expectations while dealing with this unfamiliar territory of psychological safety and distorted employee self-perceptions. What's a leader to do? Stay tuned to find out.
Welcome to Dismantling Dysfunction, a podcast series for anyone who is ready to eliminate the dysfunction they experience in their organizations, leaders, or relationships. Each week, we explore common dysfunctions in organizations, delving into the systemic causes behind them, and giving you the exact tools and practical tips you need to dismantle them. Now, here are your hosts, organizational development and behavioral change experts, Dr. Anne Dranitsaris and Heather Dranitsaris-Hilliard.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode as Anne and I continue our series on accountability, tackling that widespread issue of its dysfunction within organizations. Now, in our last episode, we explored the mistaken belief that many leaders have that a review is only done at a prescribed time at the end of the year, for example, is driven by the human resources of the organization. And so many leaders are so focused on meeting goals that they fail to think about the relational side of the review process. And that's about engaging with their employees. And this is a key part of the accountability cycle. Today, we are going to talk about and focus on this accountability action of engage and some reasons why leaders miss it in their haste to focus just on driving results. But before we continue, just make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're catching us on our YouTube channel, turn on that notification bell to make sure that you stay updated with our latest leadership videos. If you're catching us on LinkedIn, make sure that you're following us as well. And don't forget, if you find the content valuable, give us a thumbs up, give us a review on the podcast platform that you're listening to us on, or comment in the feed so that we can hear from you and have you engage in this content with us. So with that said, let's explore the epidemic of a lack of accountability in organizations.
Hey everyone, I think your opening, Heather, was brilliant as it really encapsulated that expectation currently of leaders, and that they should just be able to step up and perform to these new expectations with never having any training or development around it. Most leaders struggle just to manage their team performance, and because in the functional area of their team, they're not getting the training and development they need most of the time, and they only have their past experiences or instincts to guide them just for that functional side of their role. And many people aren't really connected with a natural ability to engage with employees. But now, with the heightened emphasis on employee engagement, attending to and accommodating employee needs and fostering their well-being, many leaders just don't know how to talk to their employees about their performance, even when it's for the employee's own benefit. Anxiety pops up because of this unspoken expectation that they need to create an environment where employees feel psychologically safe to voice their opinions, make mistakes, and be their authentic selves without any fear of retribution. So how do leaders do this? How do they hold employees accountable, review and correct underperformance without employees feeling hurt or causing them stress or even feeling uncomfortable, to say the least? It really is an outrageous expectation, isn't it?
It is, and I think this is why when we talk to so many of our clients and the leaders within these organizations, that they go into avoid mode, right? It's like, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to navigate it. I'm just not going to have any part in it, and employees can figure it out for themselves. And this creates this massive accountability gap in organizations. And the reality is too and what adds to the complexity of this is employees can be very defensive and very quick these days to judge their bosses for not only any kind of unfavorable review that their boss might give them, but even just a direct manager communicating expectations and being clear can now be taken by employees as, bullying behavior, right? And so this dynamic that they're operating in is really challenging. And let's just add to that the reality, right, that we all navigate in our roles, diverse personalities, diversity of backgrounds and experiences of each of the employees, and that what one individual might perceive as and take in as constructive feedback, another might view as harsh criticism. And this variability in people's reactions can make leaders really hesitant to speak out or address issues, fearing potential backlash or being labeled as unsupportive. One of my CEO clients that I was talking to recently, and he was saying that he recognizes that in his environment, people are not open to feedback at all, and it sort of keeps them stuck. It's created a bit of a ceiling for their organization. And when he's really honest about it, he said, and I think that starts at the top, the most senior leadership team, even themselves are not open to talking about what is working and what is not working and taking in that feedback. And so when we look at all this dynamic that's going on inside of organizations, and again, there's just so much else, even that external stuff that factors in. The rise of social media and company review platforms, means that employees have more opportunity than ever to voice their grievances, and sometimes painting these leaders who are simply doing their job and leading as in a really unfavorable light. And that's even when their intentions are good, and even when they are, acting appropriately given the authority that's placed on them in their roles as leaders. And all of this pressure, right, and that comes out to them just can really dissuade leaders from being authentic and being honest when engaging with their employees in that correct or review action of the accountability cycle.
And it's funny with some of our leader clients where they'll say to when an employee has gotten defensive, they'll end up framing it as, I can never say anything like that again to any employee because they'll get mad at me and I'm not allowed to do it. And so what leaders end up doing is they turn it around and they make it a part of the things I can do and say to employees and the things I can't do and say. And they're actually not looking at, how do I work on building the relationship and helping employees build tolerance to engagement? Because adding to what you said, Heather, is this modern trend of distorted employee self-perceptions. And this is in a world that often champions everyone is a winner narrative. Discussing their actual performance can cause conflict and misunderstandings rather than the desired engagement. Add to that the fear of upsetting employees further, leaders are no longer confident in really addressing the discrepancies that may arise, or overstepping a boundary by asking questions. Is this a privacy issue? Nobody knows the rules of the game anymore when it comes to performance management and accountability. Leaders are so busy worrying about intruding or being perceived as prying, especially in cultures or organizations that emphasize a clear distinction between professional and personal lives, that they don't ask anything. A client of ours recently said that one of the direct reports had just come back from a vacation, and when they asked him where they went, she said, I didn't ask. I thought it might be too personal. So nobody really knows where the lines are anymore.
This is true. And in fact, I hear that sentiment echoed where be in a meeting and a leader will say something and then they'll be like, oh, am I allowed to say that? Am I allowed to ask that? Am I allowed to? So you see how tentative everything is now. And and this fear, and Anne, as you said, like the anxiety that gets triggered in people because they're afraid of doing something wrong. They're afraid of what might snowball out of that. And again, we're definitely seeing an increase of employees coming to human resources or to their people and culture departments to complain that their boss is bullying, even though all that has gone on is an interaction in which their direct manager has provided them with corrective feedback or has talked to them from confronted them for a gap in their performance. And even the employees don't have that understanding of where those lines are as well. And if we sort of add another layer to this, because we are talking about sort of why is this going on, right? In addition to like the fears that leaders are bringing in that we've talked about, the fact that there's a lack of training that's been provided to them around how do they have these conversations, how do they do that engage action, that's a key element of the accountability process. It's not uncommon to find leaders who are just frankly perpetually rushed, juggling multiple responsibilities, as we say, doing leadership off the side of their desk, and just seemingly too busy to actually have the time to really sit down and have conversations with their team members. And so often that these leaders are giving the impression of going through the motions, right? Doing that tick, 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 items off their to-do list without actually investing that time, the energy, honesty. And I want to say the honesty, right? Because again, they go into avoiding. And so even if they have the conversation, they'll do things like say, oh, you just need to give it more time, or, oh no, everything's fine. And they'll sort of brush things over, sweep anything under the rug because they don't want to take the time to prepare for that conversation or to have that conversation. And this hands-off approach that we're seeing repeated over and over again in our clients can unintentionally disengage employees. It conveys this sense of disinterest or aloofness and suggesting to employees that they really aren't worth the time or the energy of their bosses. That, one of my clients was saying that what their employees complain about the most is that they don't feel like their bosses actually care about what's going on for them in their jobs and the struggles they're having, their inability to solve maybe some of the challenges. They just expect employees to be able to figure it all out independently. And so they're not being valued, and they don't feel that sense of being valued for their contribution to the organization's success.
And you can see how leaders are being set up in a way here for the win-win or lose-lose scenario. And it's not that they don't contribute to it themselves, but the expectations of engaging them, and then they make an attempt to engage and it's met with defensiveness, and they go back to doing what is easier for them to do, and they stay busy. And then they get accused of their leaders not being interested in them, as you say with your example, or that they're never available. Leaders will say, I have an open door policy, but they always look so busy and they keep working when the employee comes through the door. And so they don't seem poised to engage relationally with their people. And so the employee need to feel that they are valuable is diminished, as is their need to feel their work is important to the overall goals. And this leads to resentment and a mindset with employees that what's the point? Leaders don't realize that they actually don't have to do anything. They just have to demonstrate interest or demonstrate empathy. It's not like they have to figure out something, but having the channels of communication open and talking to their people, looking at them when they come into the office, all of these things lead to engagements. But leaders, in their bid to manage time and tasks effectively, inadvertently sacrifice one of the most vital elements to effective leadership, that genuine, meaningful, situational engagement with their people.
And it's interesting when you think about how long, Anne, that we've been talking about engagement and the importance of engagement. And I think, though, it's been a little bit sort of one-sided, where it's all about what are we doing for the employees, and we're not, don't always connect it to how fundamental it is from an accountability perspective. Because if we don't work on these pieces, as Anne said, around genuine, meaningful engagement with their team, that we don't have the relationships in place with the employees, between leaders and the employees, that allow us to work through that accountability cycle. It's so fundamental to fostering trust, understanding, collaboration, keeping defenses down, as Anne had mentioned earlier, right? An employee gets defensive in their response to something, and then that's it. The manager doesn't have these conversations anymore. But if I don't trust my manager, if I haven't built out that kind of trust in that sort of relationship, and where I know that my manager always has my best interests at heart as well, then I am going to be more defensive. It's going to be unavoidable, right? And again, the process that we're talking about is beyond just looking at, the tasks and the numbers here, the outputs. It's about connecting on a personal level, really understanding someone's motivations. What's our path forward together, right? How are we going to solve for this together? And often leaders tell us that they don't know what to say to build a relationship with their employees. And if we sort of want to change that perspective and get leaders to focus less on what they need to say and pay closer attention to what the employee has to say about their performance, about their challenges, about their aspirations, we say, a little bit less talking, a little bit more asking to seek that understanding. It's just a few relevant questions that really help to draw the employee out. Things like, for what achievements from the quarter are you most proud of, and why are you most proud of those? What are some of those skills or competencies you feel you've improved upon? And again, why is that? What have you seen? What have you noticed? Get into the conversation with them. Where are some of those aspects where you feel that you contribute more effectively? We've had a lot of clients who end up talking during the entire review process and not really see it as that two-way dialogue that they're facilitating, which is really fundamental to building that to the engage process, but also building a level of understanding. It's I don't need to just know what my employee thinks or believes to be true about their performance. I need to understand why, because that allows me to have more meaningful conversation that moves them forward in their growth.
That's funny, that anxiety that will drive a leader just to talk at their employee to alleviate their own stress, as opposed to just sitting back and putting out a question and letting the employee take over and engage. It's so much easier. A review is so much easier when you have a conversation like that, and getting to know that employee by asking questions. Empathizing gives the leader the opportunity to practice empathizing with that employee's experience and showing respect and understanding. We invite employees to have a conversation about their performance, not to talk at them. That's the whole idea. And at the same time, through this review and engage, to motivate and to really get them all fired up about their own importance and what they've contributed. And it's not like leaders are allowing excuses or defensiveness or distortions. And so we simply have a conversation, always asking questions. So here's an example during a review and discussing a missed timeline because of challenges. I hear what you're saying about the challenges you faced with that project. Let's discuss how we can address them moving forward. What are some of your ideas? And so that kind of statement, it's naming the issue. It's putting oneself as the leader into the conversation by saying, how can we address them? And asking the employee to engage in solving their own problems. It's not, why did you miss so many timelines? No, what are you going to do about it? It's languaging it in a way that gives an employee some space to come into to engage with you.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing where, it's we're going into this conversation with our employees from that perspective of growth, right? It's about how do we solve for this, as opposed to how do we simply blame them for the fact this has gone on, or point fingers at them. And, one of the things we will always say to our clients is if someone's not doing something, we have to start from the perspective of they don't know how. So if there's an issue, there's a challenge, there's a gap, that they're not solving for, then, we have to get involved as leaders in order to guide them through that solution. And that's about being, as leaders, being real, being authentic, being transparent. It seems like you're struggling with this. What can we do? Let's talk about some of the options we have, right? So we're being direct, right? We're naming it. We're naming what's actually going on, but we're doing it constructively. And we're not just doing it and so many of our clients tell us stories about where their direct managers have done this. They get a comment dropped on them and then they're like, what do I do with that? Like, I don't understand that feedback. And so this is always about, and this is where the engage part is so important, because we are engaging them in the conversation about how do we grow and evolve the performance going forward. So it's great we've gotten to this point. We recognize what worked and what didn't work, but how do we move beyond that? And again, always avoiding superlatives like that was fantastic or that was so great, because these subjective terms are actually not a measure of performance, and they usually come from avoiding, or they get used to avoid a more authentic conversation. It's like, it's really superficial, right? When you talk like that, it's like, I can't tell you why. I'm just going to say, oh yeah, it's all great. It's all wonderful. It's like super, but I'm just doing that to make you go away in essence. And employees can feel that when leaders use that kind of language. It's moving into a more authentic conversation. While your reports are always on time, you continue to submit them with multiple errors. Let's talk about steps that you can take to complete your reports differently so that we're not seeing those errors continue to be part of what you're submitting. So, and this would be, we use language a lot around mastery. Like, this would be the final step for you to master this task. So employees are striving towards mastery, and we as the leaders in the engage action around accountability are really supporting that task mastery, that role mastery. And again, it's helping them leave the conversation that they know what's done well, what needs improvement, and where they are at right now on the path to mastery, and the exact steps that they need to do in order to hit that mastery.
I know giving examples and giving words to our leader clients they always go a long way in leaders improving, and because we don't know what we don't know when it comes to, I know how I say it that's not working, but I don't know how to say it differently. Fundamentally, though, it starts with the mindset of the leader and their willingness to start relating to their employees instead of talking at them. Being genuinely invested in their employees' success goes beyond the metrics of productivity and performance. That's the easy stuff. That's the objective stuff. This is the cornerstone of genuine employee engagement, when the leader can shift from the functional to the relational. And when leaders adopt a mindset of being present and involved in their team's professional growth, this is where they create that environment. It might not seem like they're doing it in that one conversation, but they are contributing to an environment where individuals feel valued, understood, and supported. Employees feel it personally and don't think their boss is just paying lip service. And like in your example, Heather, where, oh, you did a fabulous job, because that's not a measurable term. The leader's commitment to their employee success sends the message that their contributions are meaningful and that personal and professional growth matter to them in the organization. And that only comes when leaders create that space and take that time to have an authentic conversation with their people.
Yeah, that's a really important point, is that, when you think about some of how some leaders have developed up, right? If your experience has largely been in a more traditional corporate culture that might view employee engagement as soft, or it's about, all of these other factors. It's not about your specific behavior as a leader. You may end up skipping this action and this important step in the accountability process. And this, again, it's like, there are still some folks that believe in that sort of clear divide between management and workers, and that it's not necessary to engage employees beyond ensuring they complete their tasks. And that, again, it gets in the way of the accountability process, and it fosters that lack of accountability. And then, of course, the leaders end up often blaming the employees, as we've talked about a lot. And other leaders, we hear this all the time, where they really don't understand what employee engagement truly means for them as a leader, right? It's this concept, it's this construct where, they hear it and the organization talks about it and their scores are really important, but, it's not always thinking about it or translating it down into what do I need to do or what do I need to do differently that's really going to be engaging for our people. And because it's not about the team building games, it's not about casual Fridays, it's not about, giving employees everything that they want and need. It's really about making that connection as a leader between engagement and productivity, employee satisfaction, and ultimately accountability, right? Where employees are able to deliver on and meet those expectations. And while there are lots of studies, obviously, that are out there that have really looked at the benefits of engaging employees from that productivity and innovation, turnover rates perspective, leaders are still misunderstanding or making excuses because, again, they lack the skills. We talked about the complexity of the environment, all of those things for why they don't do it. And this just leads to some longer term challenges in terms of retaining and motivating their workforce, which ultimately has a cost back to the organization and actually back to the leader. Because when the leaders see that turn and churn within their own teams, the work goes back up to them while they're rebuilding their team.
Yeah. And we can't say it enough how much engagement impacts accountability, because when employees are all in and they're feeling like their leaders care and they're part of something, accountability just becomes a part of the culture. It becomes a standard. It becomes something that every individual employee strives for themselves. So it's that time again when we drop our gem for the podcast, the time when we provide you with some insight you can take away and begin to work with. And as we've said, engaging employees is more than just a buzzword. It's a tangible factor that directly impacts productivity, retention, and overall team morale. And, of course, accountability. But to foster it, leaders need more than just good intentions. They require specific skills and knowledge and a mindset that is open to developing engagement skills themselves. It's no longer a luxury, but a necessity for organizations to invest in training and development programs tailored for leadership roles that help them with things like how to create an environment of accountability and how to attend to the psychological safety, how to deal with defensiveness in employees. And these programs should focus on honing communication skills, nurturing empathy, emotional intelligence, and of course, fostering authentic relationships with their people. And by doing so, this empowers leaders to strike the right balance between ensuring engagement, psychological safety, high performance, and all the while fostering accountability.
Yeah, and this is so important. Anne and I, when we do our work with our clients, the first place we always start when we're working with leaders around making this shift in terms of accountability is their mindset, because self-awareness, knowing what you're thinking and what you're telling yourself, is so fundamental to getting stuck in this process and in this approach. So with that, this is a wrap for this episode of Dismantling Dysfunction. Thank you so much for listening or watching us, depending on where you caught us. And join us again for our next episode where, and this is a really exciting topic, we are going to explore the hidden blockers to accountability that's caused by narcissistic leaders. Yay. And we'll be discussing this charismatic leadership style that doesn't see managing performance as part of their job, or they don't set expectations, they don't review performance because they don't know how, and they don't want to be seen as incompetent. So just a couple of the ways that narcissistic leaders contribute to the dysfunction of a lack of accountability. Now, remember, if you're feeling challenged by accountability gaps in your organization and you want to know more about what you can do about it, register for our free webinar, Why Leaders Avoid Fostering Accountability. We're going to give you insights into the 5 key mistakes leaders make when it comes to creating a culture of accountability and the exact blueprint that you can implement in your organization or in your team to actually foster and drive accountability. Make sure you go to the link on your screen to sign up. If you're watching us on the video, if you're catching us on the podcast, the link is available there for you in the show notes.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us today and investing your valuable time in listening, both in listening and gaining insights into the competencies leaders need to master and set the stage for alignment and accountability. And don't forget, you can catch all of our LinkedIn Live videos and podcasts on our YouTube channel, Dranitsaris-Hilliard. And don't remember to subscribe to our channel, turn on those notifications, tell your friends, make sure you're updated whenever we release new videos. And if you found this information valuable, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with other leaders who can benefit from it. See you in the next video.
Thank you for listening to the Dismantling Dysfunction podcast with Dr. Ann Dranitsaris and Heather Dranitsaris-Hilliard, organizational development and behavioral change experts. Be sure to subscribe to get more practical insights and focused tools to help you dismantle dysfunction in your organizations, leaders, or relationships. For more information, visit dismantlingdysfunction.com.